It was late fall or early winter, November or December, I think, 1978. 3 years into this terrible journey and still no end in sight. I was alone, with barely enough to eat, and barely paying my rent, living almost entirely in a lonely dream world, convinced that something important was happening to me, and probably in some borderline condition between sanity and madness. I didn't have a car, so as usual I took the commuter train from my apartment in West Philadelphia to Germantown, where I could easily walk down to the forest, a forest almost as wild as any Montana wilderness. I was sitting on a hill high above a creek, my back against a giant maple tree. The weather was warm, and I could sit as long as I wanted, so I sat, quietly, and waited for it to begin. It began.
A while back, I created a series of artist profile videos for the Michener Art Museum in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. The person with whom I worked most closely was curator Brian Peterson. I will be forever grateful to Brian for his encouragement, good humor, intelligence, empathy, and creative guidance. So when I learned there was an exhibition of his photographs at the Berman Museum of Art, I knew this was one show I couldn't miss.
They go back, some of them 35 years, some of them just a couple of months ago. They're divided up into groupings, but they're all connecting together.
These groupings vary in number of photographs, subject, and technique. Some are more or less straight photographs, and some are completely manipulated, either in the darkroom or with Photoshop. Some are representational, and some are abstract, but they are unified by a feeling for light and a reverence for the mysteries of creation.
But this time it was different. My eyes were closed, and my head began to tilt upward as great waves of energy flowed into me. Even though I knew I was sitting, somehow I was also standing up. I opened my eyes and looked through the bare trees to the glowing late afternoon sky across the valley. Suddenly my body crumpled, fell away, rolled down the hill, disappeared. But I was still standing there, staring at the light in the sky. I existed separate from my body. Then I saw, as if for the first time, the trees. They were not just trees. They were entities, souls like me. Their branches were straining toward the light, and the light was beautiful beyond words. Beyond words.
Brian is a writer, editor, essayist, and musical composer, but photography has been his life's passion. I asked him how this passion began.
I became interested in photography when I was a music student in Missoula, Montana. One of my music teachers started to do photography very seriously, and he built a darkroom in his basement, and I saw how the darkroom worked, and it became very interesting to me. So I began to do it. I took a class or two at the University of Montana with a wonderful photographer named Lee Nye. Lee was a wild and crazy guy who photographed the figure, landscape. He did some constructed things and was an amazing artist who I was very lucky to have been exposed to early in my life. But my main love was music. It was my first love and principal love in the arts for many years, and how I ended up in Philadelphia. Because I came to Philadelphia to study music at the University of Pennsylvania. After a lot of ups and downs, I ended up finally graduating from Penn with a music degree in 1981. And at the time, I was stupid enough to think that I could actually do both things. I was interested in photography, but I was doing music, and I thought I could do both, which was ridiculous, but...
I stood there for what seemed like an eternity, drinking in the beauty of the light. The trees, straining, reaching, they were hungry for the light. What was the sun, really? Was it just a big ball of gas in the sky, powering the Earth's systems through hydrogen fusion? It was that, and something else. What was a tree, really? Was it just a photosynthesis machine that ingested light so it could grow? It was that, and something else. At that moment, I was a tree, and I was hungry too. The light poured into me, and I opened all the doors of my soul and let it in, and the whole universe was nothing but light, and the hunger for the light. All I could do was give myself to the hunger.
I decided I wanted to get some serious formal training in photography. I applied to and was admitted to the University of Delaware's graduate program and worked with a wonderful, amazing guy who's become a dear friend now, John Weiss. John studied with famous photographer Minor White at MIT, and I studied with John, and a very powerful and life-changing experience where I got more deeply involved in photography and visual arts and began to teach photography and also do some early exhibit work and grant writing and arts administration work. I also started and ran a small gallery called the Book Trader Gallery on South Street in Philadelphia, and just in general began to immerse myself in photography and visual arts. The die was cast and I had to make a choice. Photography became it.
It would be easy to call this the bizarre illusion of a half-crazy misfit. I wondered about that myself, even when it was happening. But I knew that I was seeing the universe as it really is. I still believe that, even though the experience that day is now a distant memory. The starting point, the ending point, the primordial condition of the universe is hunger. Not a hunger that gnaws at the gut because it's so empty, but hunger that in the very act of being hungry is filled. It is never full.
Brian is the son of a geologist, and from his father, he acquired a rigorous and analytical mind. But he also seeks to relate to the physical world, the world of ideas, and to other people in a manner befitting his spiritual life.
The title of the show is Only Connect. Only Connect is a phrase used in a famous novel by the English novelist E.M. Forster called Howard's End. The notion of it is that connection is of the essence of life. It's what it's all about. The connections we form with each other, with objects, with places, with the world itself, make it alive for us and what makes our lives meaningful.
There was no longer any question about whether or not beauty exists, or whether or not God exists, or any of those useless problems that have occupied the minds of theologians and philosophers for millennia. There's no need to think about it when you're in the middle of it, when you are it. I was both inside myself and outside, but there was no longer any inside or any outside. There was no separation anymore. I was joined with the universe, but I was still me, standing there on the hill, arms spread wide, seeing the light. I wondered if what I'd seen was God, but that word was stupid and empty because there was no name for this thing, no way to wrap it up neatly, put it in a box and give it to someone else. I've spent my whole adult life trying to box up the experience and give it to others, through music, pictures, words. Nothing I've done comes close to what I felt that day. It's never easy to communicate what goes on inside our skulls, and the best anyone can do will always be a glimpse, an approximation. I know that, but I keep trying. I can't help it. It's what I need to do with my life.